Hi.
Hello.
Hey, we never. Wait, listen. Did you on this one? No.
How's it going, Tuba?
Oh, is it?
Hello.
That's good.
Friend.
Hi, Fiza.
Ah,
You're gonna make me a presenter first.
do you? I was gonna ask you, does it work for you at all
What do you mean?
to share your
Can
screen?
you try sharing your screen? Yeah, we ran into some glitches in the morning.
Can you make me a presenter so I can mute people? What I don't want is what was happening this morning.
It doesn't show us here. Am I?
Yes,
You should be able to though.
I think you're a presenter already.
Oh, am I? Okay.
Yeah, because the only
Oh,
option I have now is to make you an attendee.
Oh, okay. So maybe I already.
You don't want that.
Let me try to
So we
share
wouldn't
my
need-
screen. I want to hold on, make that one bigger once.
It'll show me here, right? Tomorrow if anyone will show.
Yes, yeah. Like, let me try one. Let me show you. Oh, nobody else has joined. What's her name left?
I know it was there.
Yeah,
Oh,
but she left. Yeah, or not? I would show you. I know her ones. Yeah, I can see your screen now, so I think you're good then.
Perfect. Okay, great.
Where?
Yeah, her screen.
Wait, that's her screen. Oh,
Yeah.
There you go. That's me. Yeah.
What are you thinking?
I thought it's you.
Not my screen. Point is having a moment. If I click mute all, it will mute. Hold on. Oh, but nobody else is in here, so I can test it.
Yeah, it doesn't work. Yeah. It kind of requires you to mute.
Yeah.
Hold on. Let me see if we
The
mute
couple
all.
others.
No, so mute all mutes
others
everyone
actually-
except me, which is all I want. Because this morning I was like, why are these people not staying on mute?
And it's always the loudest people.
It's
But you
always the
see-
loudest people. It's always the people who are having background conversations. I was like, get out. Like,
Like, where are you? And then, do you know what? I don't know where that person is from.
or
but,
I'm like, is it the people who are like in the middle of student life, like sitting where all the students are yelling at you? I was like, why are you doing this to us?
And then, one person, I was like, Mark, like, mute them. And I think Dimple got to it before I can click it, and we just disabled the person's audio.
Oh, good. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
I was like, well, sorry, not sorry. Who told you to do this? Yeah, sorry. Yeah, there's a whole glare on it.
Let me email him again. Yeah, I'm just messaging him again.
Yeah, so-
Apparently, I did not, but there is a glare.
Yeah.
Because we have a monitor.
The whole screen from there now.
Because the projector,
Yeah, that's what they did.
from the
So
projector,
yeah,
it shines on the white board that is
Okay.
there. So when you sit, like, it's like it will hurt your eyes.
Okay. Because I went with Zakir not last week, 2 weeks ago. And this was before they had removed the screen.
Oh, the broken screen.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they moved the
this
whole
was with the
unit. I
broken
think we
screen.
didn't even see the screen at all.
Yeah, they took
Yeah.
everything out.
So this was, I want to say 2 weeks ago, Zakir and I walked over.
Mhm.
Yeah.
They are bringing a TV for the outside.
Oh, perfect.
Yes, we need that
107.
for there. Yeah.
Yeah. And then
That's both
they are
fine
gonna
panels,
have,
though. Do we need it actually there?
Yeah,
and then
we
they're
do need
gonna
a
have
TV because
7.
Melanie has a presentation.
Oh yes, sorry,
Okay.
sorry.
I'm gonna kick you guys out or like make you stop talking so when people come, I'm ready. Hi. Billy might be you and me. I'm unsure. We'll find out in a few minutes. If it's just you and me, actually, I should get some music going. Let me stop sharing. Let me add some music. So there's like ambiance. Hi. I was like, let me get some music going. Let me, while we're doing this. We can start. If you're in right now, you can actually get settled in by answering this question. I'm dropping the link in the chat. Or you can scan the QR code, whatever's easier. But you can welcome in. Nice, I see 3 people are 4 people are in it. I'll just keep posting the link. So as people join in, you are more than welcome to please and start participating. We'll start in a few minutes. Okay, I think that song ending is like a good cue for us. So what I'm gonna do is not share sound and pause the song. And hopefully that works for us. Can you guys hear me? Yes, okay, thank you, Anwar. It's always nice to know that I'm not talking to myself, which I do, but like just not in this kind of a setting. So always nice to know. Thank you all for the commentary. If you haven't had a chance to join the link, I'll post it again. The QR code's on. We will go through a few other things over the course of the session that require you to stay on this website. So just don't close out of it without your phone or your tab. So people are energized with a song. Love that. The playlist is called Afternoon Pump Up. So I was like, wherever that takes us is where that takes us. Eager, excited, joyful, calm. Oh, I love that. Enjoying the interaction. Great. Happy. Oh, and a little sick for someone. I'm sorry. It feels like it's going around, but I also think I spend like 6 months a year being like, it's going around. But being sick sucks. Loving the use of belonging. Yeah. Okay, we will get started with that. I'm going to close that part. Hopefully you can see the screen. So welcome to the session on future-proofing and building a culture of lifelong learning. If that is what you signed up for, you're in the right place. If that is not what you signed up for, you are still welcome. So please stay here. So I first and foremost want to share a land acknowledgement. So I know that I don't know if everyone was here in the morning, but just before Takara started, they did this wonderful land acknowledgement video. And I wanted to share a little bit about that. And then in the introduction to myself, I also want to talk about what that means to me personally. So Humber is located within traditional and treaty lands of the Mississaugas of the Credit, known as the Etobicoke, the place of the alders in Michisagish language. This region is uniquely situated along Humber River watershed, which historically provided an integral connection for Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, and Wendat peoples between the Ontario Lakeshore and the Lake Simcoe Jordan Bay regions. Now home to people of numerous nations, Etobicoke continues to provide a vital source of interconnection for us all. And I think we do land acknowledgements a lot, but don't always talk about, what they mean for us. So I wanted to introduce a little bit about who I am and then also talk about that land acknowledgement in relation to that. I didn't realize until now, but this photo is a little bit blurry, but this is me in the middle, my dad, my mom, my twin, and then my younger brothers who are also twins. This was us visiting Rome, which was a huge privilege, something I'm really, really grateful we got to do as adults. And I think a lot about what it means My parents immigrated here in 2004, just over 20 years ago. They were in their late 30s and early 40s with 4 young kids when they immigrated here. And the reason they were able to immigrate was because they spoke English, they had 4 young kids, and they had skills that Canada considered very useful for them, right? My mom was a teacher, my dad was an engineer, and at that time, those got you more points in Canada's cutthroat immigration system. And that is why I get to be Canadian now and get to enjoy a lot of freedoms and flexibility. But when I think about, why was I allowed to do that? And throughout my education in middle school and high school and undergrad, I almost never learned about Canada's dark treatment of Indigenous people whose land this was. And the truth is that their land was considered valuable, but their labor wasn't, right? And that is what the powers that be decided, was that is what they wanted Indigenous people for, was only their land. And so they went through the systemic, that I'm sure you've all learned about since, programs to ensure that if they had any education or skills, they could not give it back to their own people as much as possible. And that has, continued on right now. And it's a dark history because I think about, like, as immigrants, I still benefit pretty deeply from colonialism because I get to enjoy more freedoms than people whose land this was get to. And labor and labor shortages is kind of related to what we're talking about today, but it also is kind of related to the whole fiscal climate that we're in right now, right? Both as the international students things that we're seeing, but also Canada's policies around immigration, and all the cutbacks that we're seeing over there. And I don't want to lose sight of that as we go through, what we're going to talk about, is that some of this is built on very, very dark stuff, and it continues to be. And I don't know if the work I do does enough to actually equal the darkness, right? Equal the gifts that I've been given that were stolen from other people. But I do weigh that with me. I know that that's not enough, but I want to share. I wanted to start there. The other ways in which I would like to introduce myself is, as a traveler, I like the outdoors in very controlled ways. So a nice photo scenic spot. This is in Yosemite. I love museums, especially natural history museums and dinosaurs. I like going to the movies and theaters. Huge basketball fan. So at the end of this, if we have time, would love to talk about the basketball playoffs if anyone's interested. I like to read a lot. And one of the things that changed for me over the pandemic was that I started reading more and more through a tablet and through the Libby app, which is one of my best friends now. And theaters, on the other hand, I go more in person than I ever did before. I watch less and less streaming movies at home and more in theater. But the pandemic changed my habit for libraries, and we're going to be talking a lot about change and what that looks like. Many other Libby people. Yeah, okay, Kobo is amazing. The fact that you can now just carry 100 books at any given point in time for free through the Libby app, no, it's a game changer. I've slowly also been getting to reading on my phone because sometimes then I can be waiting somewhere and just be reading. I think I need one of those phones that I saw someone had a phone at work that had that opened, it had, I don't know. I was whoa, that's so cool. I need that. Yeah, huge. Okay, Libby people, these are my people. So I have a question for you all, and this is interesting because I didn't know, obviously, I knew the theme of this Humber Advising Conference, and that's why I picked my topic around future proofing. But then everything that Takara was talking about today, I was oh my God, this is everything that's in my session. So what does future proofing make you all think of? I'll drop the link again. Oh, I don't want to do that. I want to show QR code in case you want that. I like that it has a feature that says show profanity. Because I don't know why I would want that. Yeah, allow profanity. Okay. Ooh, this is great. So it's the same link. So if you're staying on it, you can just stay on the same thing. What does future proofing make you think of? Adapting to current times, being proactive, learning new skills. This is great. Being relevant. Yes. Sense of security. Huge. Huge. Preparing for the future. Adapting. Yes. Managing expectations for sure. Yeah, I feel that being relevant. Okay, I'll wait till people are done typing. But this is awesome. yeah, these are all the things that this makes me think of too. You will see some things in mine that will also be similar to Takara this morning. She was really, really good at this. I really enjoyed that keynote actually. Oh, I'm going to mess up this word. Obsolescence. I know what you mean, like the idea of being obsolete, but for some reason I'm struggling to say obsolescence. But yes, right? Like, are we going to be, yeah, can we actually even exist, right? And job stability for sure, which is one of the things I want to talk about next. So how do you stay relevant, right? I actually don't know. I am not an expert at this. I am a senior administrator within student success and engagement. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. I like to do like the introduction of my title a little bit later because I think, that is not actually who I am entirely. I am not an expert at this. I have been at Humber 8.5 years, and I'm on my 6th job at Humber, 6th contract at Humber. So I have been struggling to hold down a job, but I have also been here a really long time, and I don't know. Like, I have a long, long way till retirement. I don't know, but I have some theories, right? And I thought about when I was thinking about this topic, I was thinking about like future proofing for me, but also future proofing for our students, right? If we can't be adaptable, then how can we expect our students to be? According to job sites like Zippia, people retiring now, right? So like years ahead of some of us, they worked an average 12 jobs for 3 companies over their lifetimes. Okay, 12 jobs for 3 companies. I don't know if that's going to look like that. Like I said, I'm on my 6th contract just at Humber. A little bit over that when I include my non-Humber time, and I'm just in my 30s. So I don't know if I'm going to survive till 65 with only 12 jobs, realistically, right? And then the other thing that I thought was interesting was, for a very long time, we've been encouraging people who are unsure about their education to be like, hey, why don't you pursue something in coding or computer science? But according to the New York Fed, and we've known this for a while from layoffs, but officially the New York Fed said last week that computer science is now undergoing huge unemployment and is one of the least useful degrees to start right now, which a lot of that has to do with AI. And a lot of that has to do with like just how few tech jobs there are right now for new grads. But that's a huge change, right? Like that was a pretty new thing, right? In the last decade or so to be like, please go into economics, please go into computer science, please go into, don't go into teaching, right? Because those were the ones that we were overdoing. And now within a decade, we've seen a lot of that shift, right? We need more teachers, we need more engineers. Well, we always need engineers, it feels like, but we need less people to go into economics. We need less people to go into computer science. And then it's hard to see, like, what does that look like for 5 years from now or 10 years from now? A lot of our students are starting programs that they will be job ready for in a year, but a lot of others are starting things that will take 3 to 5 years for them to actually go into the workforce, right? So how are we getting us there? I thought someone, okay, no. I could have sworn someone was commenting something, but I did not see it, so we'll keep going. Okay, so when you think about work in 2025, or sorry, work in 2035, a decade from now, do you think it looks similar to where we are now? Do you think it looks drastically different? Or do you think you just can't even imagine what it might look like? There are no wrong answers. I also don't know who's putting in what, so please feel free to put in your ideas and thoughts. Okay, so far no one thinks it looks similar to the work that we're doing right now, which is scary, but it's also exciting, right? It's an opportunity for us to think about like, what could we be? What do we want to try to be in the future? Also, I will have time at the end for questions, comments, and concerns, but if you have anything in the chat right now or during, or if you want to raise your hand in the midst, please feel free to do so. I will always lose my train of thought, but I can usually find it back eventually. So please feel free to do that. So when I was thinking about how do you reinvent, and this is a topic that, like I said, in my 30s, I have a long time before retirement. So I'm thinking a lot about this for myself, but I'm also thinking about this as a manager and for people around us, like how do we set people up for success? So there were some general ideas, right? According to news articles, one easy one, they're like, become an industry expert. I was like, great. That's what we all want. We all want to be the best at this one specific thing. So everyone feels like they have to go through us to know this answer. Easy. Okay. So thank you so much. The second was keep all pathways open, right? So the idea that like, don't tie your career to any one thing. You don't know where it'll take you to next, which still solid advice. I think sometimes hard because I don't know that I see myself going into like banking at this stage of my life. But you know what? I'm going to choose to stay open to it, And then third advice I gave us was we have to use and be on top of new technology. This is hard. I have to be very honest. I am quite hesitant around AI. I was very pro it, when I first started learning about it a year and a half ago or whatever. I was like, oh, this is amazing. And now slowly I'm at a point where I'm quite worried about it. A, because of the environmental impact of how many nuclear reactors we're using up, and what does this mean for, like, is the Amazon going to be around? Is Lake Ontario going to be around in a decade at this, like, level of usage that we're doing? But I also am a little bit worried because I'm like, is AI making, like, forget everyone else, but is it making me dumber? Because the things that I was using it for are things that I used to just use my own brain for. Like, to come up with a name for a session, I'd be like, oh, AI, can you tell me the name, or can you actually brainstorm ideas for me for what I should present on? Whereas, like, oh, I'm really concerned about what this is going to do to my own, like, mental functioning. And my brain isn't, like, good enough that I can just, be like, oh, I'll get back to it in a month or two. Like, I think if I don't use my brain muscles, I'm not going to get them back anytime soon. But I have had to get over that to be like, I need to know how AI actually works pretty well, because I want to be ready for what that means, right? I want to understand what prompt engineering is, and I want to be able to ask it questions, because I do have to be on top of, like, how are other people using it? How are students using it? But how are the staff around me using this as well, right? Even if I choose not to use it, what does that look like? But all of these things require putting yourself out of comfort zones, which we'll talk more about later. We have to align our work to our work's goals, which I thought was interesting given, like, all the conversation we're having about Humber's fiscal reality right now. The town halls last month, I guess they were, right, in terms of, like, relying our goals to work's goals. I was like, okay, generic good advice from a news article. And then the last thing that I thought was interesting was it talked about the personal reputation and brand will matter more than ever. This part I was thinking a lot more about, because I was thinking, about what are the things that AI can't replace, and what are the things that technology still needs humans to do. And yeah, that sounds fair. But I thought all of this is a lot to ask for, right? This, like, oh, be an industry expert. Great, would love to do that. How do I get there, and how do I do something that only I can do? I don't feel like I'm an expert on anything, right? And I'm not entirely sure that I would like to be the expert on anything, but I definitely was like, well, this seems hard. If you guys have any thoughts on these, let me know. But yeah, we'll keep going. So then the real question is, like, really, how do we reinvent, right? Like, what does that look like for me personally? And what is something that I can offer? And this I thought was very interesting. I wrote down, we have to embrace what makes us human even more. And this is one of the things that I thought Takara this morning was also talking about. Emotional intelligence and relationship building are not going anywhere, right? We need to get out of what has always been done, right? And I think that for our jobs can be really, really hard. In a lot of ways, like when I was a residence life coordinator at Humber, which is where I started my career, the kinds of student cases or scenarios that I worked on looked different than they did a decade ago, and I'm sure they look different than they do now, like 8 years since I started. But the fundamentals of that job haven't changed, right? In terms of the kinds of hours that job does, the kinds of student outreach it does. Some things have changed where, like, I remember initially I used to have paper files for students. I remember when I used to train staff on it years later, they were like, paper files. I was like, yeah, now it's all, on the software system we use. But the kinds of notes we'd make on students, the kinds of meetings we'd have with students, that stuff hasn't changed, right? Like what my manager taught me from a decade ago, from like a decade before my time, to what I passed on to my staff 5 years later, pretty similar stuff, right? And that is the way it has always been done. So we may have changed some of our rules, we may have changed, who our students are, but the way we do stuff, I can tell you, like, didn't change enough, right? I have now been out of the department a few years. I'm sure they've changed stuff more since I've been gone. But it is kind of interesting to think about, what have we been doing? And, like, what does that look like? I do also think that one of the things that the pandemic has made us less, or worse at, I should really say, to be very honest, is that we are not as good at relationship building, I think, as we used to be. I'm so grateful that I have so many work connections, not necessarily friends, but just connections from before the pandemic that I got to carry on and deepen. And that my department has been pretty in person for the last few years. And so I've had a chance to get to know people again and in new lights, but that has been a huge challenge right? And I sometimes have great ideas, just like running into people or being like, oh, so and so in this department had a great idea, and I think we can partner on that, or things like that. And that doesn't really happen when we don't have relationships built, when we don't, have access to those things. And I think that that needs to be even more core to what we do with students and with each other, right? And then I think there does need to be a professional development and learning. And this kind of ties to like, we can't do what has always been done. We have to keep growing. And some of that can be theoretical. So for a lot of you who are full-time Humber staff, we have access to really great courses and free professional development, right? I understand that like conferences may not be the move going forward if they cost a lot of money, but we have a lot of other opportunities to learn and grow. I'm taking an adult education course on assessment right now, specifically on assessment, which is on like, how can I help adult learners? How can I know that adult learners are actually like learning something? Like, how do I assess that? Which I'm doing partially because I like to teach, but also I actually want to figure that out for my staff teams, right? Like, how do I ensure that if I'm planning a professional development afternoon for them, that something is happening from that? And that's, I'm taking for free. Right? I mean, it's my time, but like I'm not paying anything for it. And it's been a wonderful course, really, really great professor. But I also think some of that can be practical and creative. It doesn't have to be things that cost money. It doesn't also have to be things that you think are related to what we're doing. So I don't have a lot of creative talents. I'm not a great, I appreciate art a great deal, but I'm not an artist in any way. But one of the things I decided to challenge myself in the winter was that the city of Mississauga, which is where I live, was offering really cheap courses on a few things. So one was ballet that I really was interested in, and one was a glass fusion class. And I'm not a dancer. I don't have a very strong core. I also don't know anything about glass fusion. But I was like, you know what? These are very affordable. They're less than 10 minutes for me. Why don't I go try something on the weekends while I have time? It might be really, really good for me. Ballet had been like on my list for a while. Oh God. Okay, this is kind of what that looks like. So what glass fusion is, what I thought it was that I would go in, we would all do the same thing, and maybe I pick a different color than other people, and I learn how to make stuff. No, you just go in, they teach you how to use a diamond cutter, they offer you sheets of glass, and they're like, best of luck, go for it. Okay. So I struggled a lot. I initially was like, oh, let me try making a fruit bowl with some fruits, and I realized it's really hard to cut. Like it's just really hard to freehand cut any kind of a circular or curve shape, right? So I was like, you know what I can do? I can cut things like this. So this is what it looked like on the left when I started, and then this is kind of what they looked like when it was done, right? So you can see, and so every single one of these jagged or uncut things is like stuff that I cut and placed and glued on, and then something like that. I just used shards of pieces that I had, the colors that I could find, and then because I couldn't figure out how to do a circle or cut it, I just cut up shards and placed them in the circle. Was like, this is a circle, and that's it, right? Like it's not my best work. I hope to do better in the future. I did this for fun. I did this just to like engage my brain and to do gifts actually for Eve was my plan. But what I got out of it was so much more, and it actually gave me really good ideas on how to reimagine onboarding for new managers in our department, in terms of how to do hands-on work, but also to let people, like, give them a little bit of information at the start, let them do their jobs, and then actually do check-ins and onboard through like a period of 6 months for new managers, instead of doing it all in the first 3 weeks when they don't necessarily know the full context of their jobs or their teams yet. And it was kind of cool because why would a glass fusion class give me ideas like that? But it really forced me to think about like, oh, when I am working through problems is when I actually need more help and when I can have specific solutions or questions in mind, versus at the start when it's all kind of, in your head, a conceptual idea of like how I would like to manage my team, much more challenging, right? So that was a really, really cool idea that I got just from a very creative thing that I did for fun. And curiosity killed the cat, right? That's what the saying says. I don't even know if that's true, but that is what the saying goes. But it is good for us as humans, okay? I think about like both scientific research and where that takes us to in terms of like curiosity, but I think also like not just in any one domain. I think asking questions and not being the expert but being like, I am curious about these things. I just want to learn more is amazing. And we have such great technology that makes use of that. For this presentation, I was like, you know what? I haven't done in a while. I haven't used Google Scholar in a while. So I just logged into the Humber libraries, like login, and I was pulling up like scholarly research. I was like, this is awesome, right? Like on, like literally I was pulling it on like future proofing and lifelong learning, but we just have access to that stuff for free right now. Like that's so cool. Haley, that's so nice of you. Thank you so much. I actually really enjoy doing stuff with my hands as a person who's usually like clicking clacking on a computer for most of my day. So I am hoping to do more of these in the summer, but it was, really rewarding. And then to come up with ideas for work from like a weekend hobby, I didn't go into it for coming up with ideas, but it's kind of cool how your brain works and how it processes things, right? As you are actually like firing on different kinds of cylinders than you usually do. Okay, next question for you guys. What does the growth mindset make you think of? I can add the, oh God, I can add the link back in, I guess I can add from here. Just in case you're a person who keeps dropping the link. Make it easy. No rush. We have half an hour, we're good. Well, this keeps your names. I did not know that I did that, so. Things that are hard might not always be hard. Haley, yes, absolutely. But it's so hard to teach ourselves that. I know, like I was trying to do some online dating and it's very challenging to be like, oh my God, this sucks now, but it's like, it might not suck forever. I do have to try it, right? Think out of the box, Lucy. Yes, absolutely. Challenge yourself. I know, I agree. Growth mindset, to be motivated to move to the next step. Melina, I totally agree. I hope I'm saying your name right. And it was like, I would have elaborated a bit more. Yeah, I also didn't know because the others didn't have people's names. So I think maybe for the like big parts, it does that. For maybe the like chat like this. So I think the last one I'd also have your name. Lifelong learning, Bobby says, not settling with what I know as the correct way answer method. Yes, absolutely, right? Like, and I think that can be really hard, especially when we've been doing things for a really, really long time. It can be challenging to get out of that and say, into this like zone of, this is maybe not the only way or still the best way currently to keep doing that thing, but always evolving, right? So this actually will tie into our next thing really, really well. Sophie says, always challenging yourself to adapt to new environments and information. Yes. And I think like we struggle with change. Like I struggle with change a great deal. And some of that is like departmental change, like going into, like I remember even going from fully remote, how hard it was to go fully remote in the pandemic, and then how hard it's been to go back to being fully in person, right? And I like being in person. My commute is short. I love the social interaction, but it has been really, really hard. And those are like minor things when you think about the scale of a life, and the kinds of changes and challenges we go through. So it can be really, really hard to be like, okay, the context around us is changing, so I have to change and adapt to it. Lucy says, the thinking to help team individual grow as a whole. Yes. And for your personal growth as well. I love that, Lucy. Yes, absolutely. Melina said, not to panic when approaching something you have never done before. Yes. Yes. Gabby says, read it for the start. Oh my God. Also, one of my big AI concerns, just so you all know, and this has been like in chatting with some of the students, not all the students, I know it's not all youth by any means, is I'm worried that they don't read books anymore. Because I'm like, you understand how important it is for you to read? Like it like changes your life, it changes your horizons, right? To like just like go read things sometimes. And they're like, well, it's okay. And I was like, oh, I don't want to generalize this by any means, but like reading is like a huge life skill for us, right? So we want that. I want so badly for you to just like read outside of the things that you do. Christina says, you think of growth mindset as stairs progression. Yes, not a one step. It's a discipline, exploration, purpose, and community. This is amazing, Christina. This actually is a summary of everything that I would offer. So this is awesome. This is great. I love these answers. Okay, Natasha said, doing things outside of your comfort zone. Yes. Oh my God. And the process and the learning. Yeah, it is actually sometimes, when they're like, the journey doesn't matter, it's about the destination. No, the journey does matter, actually. Sometimes the journey is the point, is like how you get to the answer, not necessarily like what the answer is. So absolutely, right? The process of the learning experience matters. Yes, huge. So next up, I want to talk a little about embracing that failure, right? Like your comfort zone can't be enough. So we've talked about this a few times in a few different ways. And then the growth mindset that we just talked about becomes so critical. We will get things wrong, right? In trying to change and trying to figure out like what does the future version of us look like? What does the future of work, future of Humber look like? But like, how do I survive into the next 10 years, right? 10 years from now, it's still going to be very far from retirement. But whatever I do right now, when we talked about our earlier future proofing, it needs to last us through all of the next steps, right? We have to ask questions, and the trying leads us to the right place, right? Kind of to Natasha's point, the process is important because of where that gets us to. And then I think like this ties to, I think, who said this? Christina has talked about community, right? So we also have to grow into and with people who want to thrive for the future. And I really want to stress this point. I think it's really, really important for us to think about like not only, where are we trying to get to for ourselves, but are you creating space where others feel like they can take chances, they can do new things, and they feel comfortable talking to you about them, about their new things, but also like going along with them on those new things. Because one of the things that I think at work, and Humber is an interesting place because sometimes it can feel quite similar to a corporation and like how slow we are to adapt to things, right? Because we are a very, very, very big institution with a lot of moving pieces, and there are processes for everything. Okay, like literally everything. Last week, I got to work on this really cool thing and welcome this like Welsh delegation. Like 11 people from different Welsh institutions were here to learn about like different Canadian institutions. So they're spending Friday with Humber. And it was quite lovely. At the end, they gave us, and I didn't actually do much. I was just there hosting them. Someone else organized it, but very, very cool. They have a very different education system than us. At the end of it, they gave us all these like lovely little gifts, like frames and tea towels and things like that. And our VP was there, so I was like, can we just accept these? And he was like, technically anything over $25, we have to declare. And I was like, I don't know how to assess the value of a tea towel. I'm guessing it's less than $25 because I hope no one's bringing tea towels that are worth more than $25. Although I'm sure there's some like very organic, woven, self-drying, self-washing tea towel that exists. But I was like, there are rules for everything, right? But sometimes the barrier is us, right? Sometimes the barrier is a coworker who comes to you to say, I want to do something differently. And it's us saying, that's not how we do that, right? And I really want you to encourage yourself to not be that kind of person, which is really, really hard to say like, yes, we have always done student case notes in this one format, and we don't have to do them that way anymore, right? If that's not working. And then also, if you feel like you're around a lot of people who are just the naysayers all the time, who don't want to grow, who don't want to thrive a decade from now, 5 years from now, who are happy to just become obsolescence. I hope I'm saying that right. Who are happy with obsolescence. I really like that word for whoever shared that. Consider how close you want to be to that person, right? Like maybe your cubicle has to be next to them, but maybe that doesn't have to be a person who you keep in your community outside of sharing a cubicle. Because that is so, so critical to how we embrace failure, is like a community of people who will say like, yes, right? And I think a really good question that I saw was like, what can you do today that you couldn't do a year ago? And what do you want to be able to do a year from now, right? That you're like, oh, I can't see that for me today, but a year from now I could be X, Y, Z, or I could try, a few different things. So I really, really want you guys to challenge that and think of that. I know that I know none of this is easy, and I know none of this is concrete also, right? It's just things. But as I was going through this exercise, one of my takeaways was that there is no answer that works for all of us, right? Because we are different. But I think these like techniques and these tips should work for all of us, hopefully, right? Okay, I wanted to talk about the mighty potato and its PR. And I know this is a bit of a weird story. I did not do a poll for this, but are there any potato fans in the house? Melina, thank you so much. Ainur, Haley, yes. Okay, thank you. All right, Natasha, potato fans. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about potatoes because potatoes have like a fascinating story. And when I think about change and adapting, I actually think about potatoes, which is kind of funny and weird. Because 15 years ago, and I actually will drop that article in here if anyone is interested. I read this like deep dive on potatoes that actually changed my mind about how I thought about potatoes. So my family background is Indian. I don't think of potatoes as a traditional food for my people. We have like some potato-based dishes, but like it's not huge for my family particularly. I know different people in India do have different potato relationships. So I actually think of potatoes as like I associate them with like Canada or like North American or European food, but generally speaking with like white cultural food because that is what my exposure to potatoes has been like has expanded, right? Because there were fries and mashed potatoes and gnocchi and hash browns and tater tots. And there were so many ways to cook a potato. And I was like, what is up with potatoes? Why do these people love potatoes so much? Just to be clear, I love potatoes. Okay, they're delicious. But I was like, how are you finding 18 different ways to bake a potato and half bake a potato and to, russet potato, like have all these things? I was like, what is happening right now? It's pretty cool. Potatoes originated not in Europe, but in the Andes, right? So in South America. And many researchers believe that potatoes and corn saved Europe from famine and allowed them to grow as an empire. That sounds crazy, I know. But potatoes are incredibly hardy food, okay? They're very easy to grow, very high nutritious. They don't require a ton of water, and they're like double caloric density than a lot of other food you might want to grow. And potatoes just like they kind of survive in most temperatures. So unless there is something like a disease that knocks them out, potatoes do great, right? It has been grown on the International Space Station. Whenever there's some like sci-fi movie where they're in Mars trying to grow stuff using their like bodily fluids, they're growing potatoes because they're so easy to grow and so hardy. People can live off of potatoes for weeks. Like if you have potatoes and water, you can be good, which is kind of crazy. Okay. But they were considered foreign and common when Spanish invaders first brought them into Europe. People were like, we don't want these potatoes. Okay. These are other people's food. And they're basic, right? Is what they would have called them then. And there's actually quotes from that time in the 1700s when they were bringing in potatoes where people were like, we will not be eating these other people's, bad food, is what the Spanish invaders are bringing us. And so, but like the royal family and, there's a bunch there that I won't get all the way into, but it's a fascinating history. They got really into potatoes and realized like how nutritious and valuable they are. So they really wanted people to eat potatoes. So King Louis XVI set up an all potato dinner for high society guests, right? They were trying really hard to be like, we got to get the people on the potatoes, right? And they're like, this is the king's special vegetable and we don't want it stolen from the gardens. And, enough that they could be stolen from the gardens and the guards would be relaxed. And then Marie Antoinette, who was his queen, she wore like a potato headdress. There's paintings of it, but there isn't a photo because I guess in the 1770s, we don't have great photos at that time. But they tried really hard to be like, we got to get the potato better PR. And the potato has changed. The potato has been used for wars. So when European armies later, once it had been adopted, would go into war, they were taking potatoes with them, right? Because they could grow them wherever they were fighting wars. Not saying colonialism is good. Okay, that's not what we're talking about today. But with the upside of the colonialism, not the upside of the colonialism. The upside of the potatoes was that they could kind of go wherever. Right? Potatoes can thrive in any part of the world. You can grow them, not in like the dead winter, but pretty much every other environment potatoes can thrive. And like I said, don't require a lot of water, don't require a lot of maintenance. And then potatoes have changed, right? So like when you think about potatoes now, and like I talked about earlier, all of the ways in which you can grow a potato is kind of crazy, right? But a potato is future-proofed, right? So unless a disease hits them, they're ready to adapt. They're like, you can do it with salt, you can do it with garlic butter, you can do it with Parmesan, you can do a potato in any kind of way, and a potato will survive. But the potato also took PR, right? Like it took people being like, oh, there's all these things you can do with it. We need the people to buy in to what a potato does. And I'm like, I want to be a potato, right? Like I want to figure out like, how do I reinvent and stay useful, right? I am not that hardy. I don't have, when people are like, oh, I can survive anywhere. I'm like, not me. I'm not surviving in any of these like apocalyptic scenarios. But I would like to be able to thrive, as the work around us changes. There's a lot coming down the pipeline that I'm sure I don't even know about or understand right now. But I hope the potato can inspire you to think about that. And actually, before I forget, let me drop that link in here because it is long. But if you're ever interested in the history of potatoes, it's very well sourced. It's really, really interesting. There's also a book on how potatoes like helped Europeans like conquer the world, and I think this does a better like summary of the potato, much shorter. So would recommend if you're interested in learning more about the potato. But yeah, I bet you didn't think you were going to hear this much about potatoes today, but here we are here talking about potatoes. Okay. The other thing that I wanted to kind of leave you guys with is like, the fall trees and a culture of continuous growth and reinvention, right? So the fundamental question for us in current jobs becomes, how does this help students, right? That has to be the question we ask. And I'm assuming we're all, in advising and thinking about students. But that has to become our first and foremost question, right? It's like, whatever I'm doing, how does this help students, right? The second question is, how does this help us? And it can be the us that is, the us in this room, like the us in your team. The us can just be me, right? Because I say yes to things sometimes not because it helps students, but because I can see that it has like career implications for me, or it gets me on the good side of someone, or whatever that may look like, right? And then the third question, and I think this is really, really important, is like, are we listening to what is happening? Either the context around us, or more importantly, like the feedback the students are, or the environment is giving us. Because sometimes it is telling us like, hey, what you're doing is not working. What you're doing won't last for the future, right? We can't take this long to do these things. Students can't be in crisis when they get to us. Is there a way that we can approach them, find them sooner? Students can't persist when they have to navigate 8 services by themselves, right? We have services for everything, but students have to navigate every single one on their own instead of someone helping them do that, right? Unless they're in really, really dire straits, in which case then yes, sure, we can help them with that. But I think these are 3 like pretty fundamental questions that I want to leave you guys with, right? Like, how does this help students? How does this help us / me? And then are we listening, right, to whatever the feedback around us is? Okay. I wanted to present 45 minutes and leave the rest of the time for a chat, questions, and then also I'd ask you guys at the start, how are you feeling? And I wanted to ask you at the end is, how are you feeling? I don't know if this is public, switch to private. No, I don't want to do that. I don't know if this is the one that has names or not. So maybe assume it has names when you put them in. I don't know. Wait, let me stop presenting and see if I can find out. Okay, it is open-ended. 1 sec, because I want you guys to feel like you can share things without having your names on here, but I don't know. I don't need the 5 second hit that. Okay, that's okay. We'll just keep going. But please assume that your names are on here as you share things. You also are, please, more than welcome to raise your hand or unmute, or drop it in the chat if you have, feelings, questions, comments, concerns, all that kind of good stuff. You had very good feelings when you guys started. You were eager, you were excited, a little sick. So I'm hoping you feel at least some of those 45 minutes in, and that we can use the remainder of this time to just chat. And I would love the idea of rebranding. That's for us to learn more. And I would thank you also for being brave enough for us to find out. Yeah. Bobby, oh, I love that. Enlightened. Love the interactive session. Thank you. I am a big believer that if you're going to be virtual, you have to have games in there because it's the only way to know that. I mean, you guys have been good in like putting it in the chat, but sometimes I'm like, am I talking to myself? And I understand why no one wants to keep videos on because it is weird when there's a big screen also. But I'm like, this is helpful, right? It tells me that I'm not me. Relaxed and encouraged. Also, if you guys have any questions or comments, I wanted to have this time for, share ideas, thoughts, whatever it looked like as well. Melina, the potatoes story really resonates with me. Super interesting. Thank you. I always try to find one or two things that I'm like, this is my like, personal stuff, weird hobbies. So this time I was able to share about like this glass fusion class that I took and about potatoes, which I'm genuinely interested in. And like, I'm not interested in potatoes because of their history. I just think potatoes can be cool. But then you never know, right? Like I said this earlier, like you never know what your interest can tie into. But like the story of potatoes ties into so much more than you think. Like you can talk about the history of potatoes all the time, okay? So the next time you eat a really good potato, is the time to do it. Yeah. Also, I don't know if you guys are air fryer people, but I recently discovered like the easiest way to cook potatoes, which is just to like dice them, soak them in water for a little while, and then just like olive oil and then whatever spices you want, and then air fry them. It's so good. It's like the healthiest fries, and then also just delicious because it's baked potatoes. Hard to go wrong with baked potatoes and spice, but delicious. And Parmesan, obviously, must. Haley, inspired to learn something new this week. I love that. I am happy to stay here. If other people want to chat, unmute or anything else. But if not, you are more than welcome to leave as well. Thank you all for coming. I was so worried that I was going to go long that I went maybe a little bit short. But thank you all for joining. I hope this was useful and that you learned something. Thank you, Bobby. Thank you, Gabriella. Thanks, Sahal. Thanks, Anur. I have to message you back for lunch as well. I'm going to do that right now. Thanks, Christina.